When 23-year-old Jackie Hernandez moved into a new house in San Pedro, California in the fall of 1988, she began experiencing a wide range of paranormal phenomena. The phenomena continued after multiple relocations, hundreds of miles apart from one another. The activity lasted for over 2 years. The investigators collected lots of documentation, which included photos, videos, and physical evidence. Some of the documentation was analyzed by experts, making this case compelling and significant. Jackie Hernandez left her ex-husband, Al, and moved from LA to San Pedro, California. Hernandez moved into her new home with her 2-year-old son. She was also pregnant with her second child. Jackie was struggling to pay her bills and was not finished with her degree, but she hoped for a fresh start. Strange happenings started to occur shortly after she moved in. The happenings were small at first. It started with a pencil holder flying off a desk. She also began to hear unexplained noises, such as screeching from inside the walls or the shuffling around in the attic. She would also find the attic door open after she closed it. This happened multiple times. One night, Jackie and a friend of hers saw several orbs of light float through the kitchen while cooking. When Hernandez tried to get a photo, she saw the face of an emancipated old man staring at her through the window. There was nobody there when she looked outside. Jackie told her ex-husband Al about the paranormal happenings. He suggested that she should call the spirits out. Hernandez's landlord was also informed about the happenings. He suggested that she should call up priests. She took his advice. However, priests acted in a strange manner. When they checked out her place, they concluded that she was being possessed rather than haunted. The priests contacted CPS because they thought Jackie was using hallucinogens while pregnant. However, I believe CPS found her to be fine. I cannot be 100% sure on this, but based on what I found in this case, that seems to be what happened. The activity seemed to increase after Jackie gave birth to her daughter, Samantha. One time while she was bringing in groceries, she noticed that the bags on her fridge spelled, "Get the hell out." It didn't seem like a break-in had occurred. Later that evening, Jackie began to hear raspy breathing. She followed the sound to her son's bedroom. She then saw the apparition of an old man sitting on her son's bed and staring at her. He looked around 60 years of age. When she looked back, he was gone. She saw this apparition several times in the following months, always with a menacing look on his face, like one time when she woke up to find the man sitting on the kitchen table with his legs crossed. A couple months later, Jackie was exploring the attic and felt a presence behind her. She then turned around and saw a disembodied head coming towards her. The head had the face of a pudgy man with glowing red eyes. Another day, Jackie and a friend noticed that a picture frame along with its hanging nails was moved. Later, Jackie and her friend Chrissy noticed a strange liquid dripping from the sides of the glasses in her kitchen cabinet and from the cabinet doors. The unknown liquid was viscous and had an orange color. Jackie and Chrissy took a sample of the unknown substance. Hernandez would begin to routinely find herself surrounded by puddles of this unknown liquid. Jackie also began to see objects flying across the room around this time as well. Jackie's friend, Susan, suggested that she should reach out to paranormal investigator Barry Taft. Jackie contacted Taft in early August 1989. Taft and his team visited the house on August 8th. Susie, Chrissy, and Al were already at the house. Many of the visitors felt a pressure in the air and noticed a smell like iodine in the laundry room below the attic. They also kept hearing what sounded like a 200-pound rat running around the attic. One of the investigators, Jeff Wheatcraft, went up into the attic to locate the source of the sounds. He took some photos in the darkness. Jeff saw movement in his peripheral vision and got the feeling of being watched. While he was trying to locate the source of the sounds, an unseen force yanked the camera from his hands. Jeff and Barry went back into the attic to retrieve the camera. They found it inside a crate along with the lens 4 to 5 meters away, completely intact. The investigators and visitors witnessed several other paranormal events that night. Next morning, a comment of light was found in a photo that Jeff took. This was the first of many lights to appear on film. Weeks later, Conrad videotaped Jackie's front gate opening and closing on its own. He then discovered a fascinating light in the footage. Barry caught dozens of lights on tape during the ordeal. The tapes were analyzed by aerospace physicist Dr. James Robin, along with etymologist Keith Dobry. Neither were able to find a logical explanation. Dr. James Robin even said the possibility of them being paranormal is very strong. The activity started to get violent by this point, even though some of the phenomena she experienced was quite benign. One time Susan and Jackie saw a ball of light fly over to a doll shelf and illuminate the doll's eyes. In August 1989, Chrissy and Jackie saw numerous small, fast-moving lights dancing around in the kitchen. The balls repeatedly broke apart and rejoined. Jackie was able to get a few photos before the lights collapsed into one little ball and disappeared. This was one of many lights Jackie was able to take photos of. Jackie's photos were analyzed by multiple photographers, who all concluded that they were not faked or altered. One expert even claimed that the images would be hard to create even in a laboratory setting. Another night, the entity threw a beach ball into the living room. When she went to retrieve it, she was grabbed by an invisible hand that held her down to where she couldn't breathe. When she escaped the entity's grasp, she grabbed a bat and ran into the attic. She then called out the entity and it appeared in front of her. After that, she immediately contacted Taff and his crew. Once Taff and his crew got to the house, they found another viscous orange liquid oozing from the walls and cabinets. Taff then took a sample of the substance. Taff sent his sample along with a sample Jackie took earlier to a medical facility near UCLA. The lab concluded that the liquid was heavily oxidized blood plasma from a human male, high in copper and iodine. The 4th of September was the peak of the activity. Lights turned on and off, a door slammed closed on Jackie, and objects flew across the room. Susan and the investigators went back into Jackie's house to provide Hernandez support. To the investigators, Jeff Wheatcraft and Gary Bohem went into the attic where they smelled a rotting odor. Meanwhile, Jackie and Conrad saw lights in the laundry room below and heard what sounded like finger snaps. Susan also saw a flash of white light and heard moaning from the attic. Just then, the entity attempted to hang Wheatcraft on a rafter beam with a clothesline. It happened really fast. Gary then spun around and took a few photos before helping Jeff. The crew searched the attic before and never found a clothesline. When Hernandez's kids were waiting on the porch, a red mark appeared on her daughter's forehead. This was the last straw for Jackie. She and her kids were out of the house by 3 a.m. After the hanging incident and the attack on her daughter, Jackie moved into a trailer home in the town of Weldon, California. Her new home was 3 hours away from San Pedro. The activity ceased for a while. However, it started back up again in March of 1990. One night when Al was staying there, he got up and walked up to the shed. When he got back into the trailer, a plume of smoke flew into the back of his head. He began to attack Jackie. He returned to normal once the smoke flew out of his head and disappeared. Jackie found his name written all over the closet walls the next morning. A babysitter Jackie hired experienced strange happenings as well. 16-year-old Tina Lawler saw a dark gray shadow in the trailer, along with several balls of light. She also found red slash marks on the walls. Later, Jackie and Tina saw a black shape falling into the daughter's bedroom. When they entered the room, they found that a lamp had fallen onto the bedspread and left a burn mark that looked like a woman's face. One morning, Jackie's neighbors were helping her move a large TV when they saw the face of an evil corpse-like old man with moving eyes in the corner of the screen. The apparition looked similar to the one Jackie saw at her old house. The activity in and around Jackie's trailer increased after that event. Doors opened by themselves, the sofa levitated, and Jackie heard tapping from the windows and voices from the shed. She also saw human apparitions along with skeletal figures here. Tina also claimed to have seen a skull through a camera lens one time. On September 24th, 1989, not long after Jackie moved out of her bungalow, she invited a few friends and a local psychic to make contact with the presence. They concluded that there were 5 entities in the home after conducting 2 Ouija sessions. One of the alleged entities called itself SME. Once the activity stirred back up in Hernandez's trailer home, she contacted Taft once again. Taft and his team made a long trip to her trailer home. When they arrived, some neighbors of Hernandez were at the house. The first team conducted a few interviews. Once the interviews were finished, all the neighbors but Tina went home. Jack insisted that they all should use the Ouija board and make contact with the presence. Conrad tried to set up 2 video cameras to record the session, but neither would turn on. It wasn't just the cameras that weren't working. It also happened with heat sensors and other devices they had. If the device would turn on, it wouldn't last very long. Jackie kept a handwritten transcript of the session. Barry and Jeff held the planchette. When they asked the entity to identify itself, the planchette spelled out SME, just as in the previous session. The ghosts claimed that they were drowned at the San Pedro Bay in 1930 and that their murderer lived in Jackie's old house. The entity also said that there were more spirits present. Witchcraft and Conrad then asked the entity why it was fixated on Jeff. The planchette then spelled out, "He is the likeness of my killer." When they asked another question, Jeff was lifted off the ground and thrown into the wall behind him, along with his chair. Later that night, Jeff would act strangely as if possessed. He also insisted that they should get back to the board, which they reluctantly did. During that session, they learned that the spirit thrived on their energy. The haunting began to die down after the seance. In May of 1990, Jackie visited Susan in San Pedro. The night Jackie was visited, they saw a ball of light leave Jackie's house. The light went into the Harbor View Memorial Cemetery. When Jackie and Susan walked to the graveyard, they saw a ball of light appear that led them to the grave of John G. Damon. Damon was the owner of Jackie's old house from 1910 to 1913. The activity started up again when Jackie moved to an apartment not far from her previous home. She saw orbs of light on 2 occasions and got some photos. The activity around Jackie died down once again. From July on, the investigators experienced most of the phenomena. Conrad's apartment was a center of the activity after July 1990. Conrad did experience strange phenomena in his apartment before, though. Conrad saw lights, heard breathing, and had a number of household objects catch fire, but more commonly experienced electronics being manipulated, stove burners turning on, and objects being moved or ported around the house. Jeff was one time held down and scratched by an unseen force. Both Jeff and Gary experienced some activity in their homes as well. Conrad, Jeff, and Gary experienced over 40 poltergeist events within just a few hours on December 4th. Gary saw Jeff get thrown by an unseen force after a light flew into his chest. Later that day, the 2 witnessed a large, humanoid blob of light disappear into the wall. This happened in Conrad's home. They were hit with flying coins and other objects when they tried to follow the blob of light. The activity around Conrad decreased after this night. The activity around Jackie decreased as well. Jackie eventually stopped experiencing physical activity but still felt a presence several years after 1990. This case is pretty convincing and has some pretty good evidence, but there are some skeptical points that shouldn't be ignored. I will also talk about where I personally stand on this case. Let's turn on something that made me question this case. One thing I questioned is a couple seemingly Hollywood has scary story parts of this case, which is the evil-looking old man apparition, disembodied head with glowing red eyes, the fact that a lot of the occurrences happened in the attic, the skeletal figures seen by Jackie and other witnesses. Those kind of sound like things that would be in a Hollywood movie or a fictional ghost story. Other skeletal points come from other content creators. I'll link their videos in the description. One person pointed out that despite there being a whole team of investigators present, little, if any, photo and video evidence exists. Taff and his team explained this by saying that their equipment wouldn't work when they tried to capture activity on film, but some might find that too convenient. Some have argued that in the case of Wheatcraft strangling, Bones' reaction was unrealistic and that the natural reaction would be to assist him rather than take multiple photos. Another possible issue that should be pointed out is minor inconsistencies with an unknown encounter. A documentary about the case produced by Barry Conrad, and an episode of Paranormal Witness on the case, titled Man in the Attic. The first inconsistency is a scene in the Paranormal Witness episode where the power goes out during Jackie's first interview with Taff. This was not mentioned in an unknown encounter. It's kind of odd that it wasn't. The second inconsistency is that Al is presented as an art skeptic in the Paranormal Witness episode. This is also not mentioned in an unknown encounter. In fact, there are even indications that he witnessed some of the activity. Those weren't all the possible issues with this case. There are others. However, most, if not all, are minor. I'm going to tell you where I stand. So do I think this case is genuine? Well, that is kind of a broad question. That can mean multiple different things. The questions I am going to answer in this video are two separate things. The first one is, do I think the witnesses and investigators were being truthful? The second one is, do I think this case is paranormal? The answer is yes for both. Now I'll explain why and counteract the skeptical points. I'll go in the same order as I did before. I think the seemingly Hollywood-like events make sense for this case. I think the old man apparition makes sense for what some of the witnesses thought it was. Jackie and at least two of the investigators believed that the old man was a ghost living in hell. To me, it makes sense that a spirit in hell would have decayed to where they looked corpse-like, along with the old age and the fact that they died. The reason why it looked evil was probably because he or it was threatening Jackie. This all makes sense in a paranormal sense, but not in a scientific sense. I think there is also a sensical reason for the floating head, the occurrences in the attic, and the skeletal figures. If you were to believe that a demonic entity or entities were involved, one could argue that those were actions to scare the victim and investigators. I heard from an exorcist interview that a lot of what demons do, like moving objects, messing with the room temperature, and so on, are to scare the exorcist and his team. The entity or entities might have manifested as a disembodied head with glowing red eyes and skeletal figures to scare the witnesses and investigators. The entity or entities might have been using the act to mess with the investigators. It would also make sense that the demonic would try to scare the victim and break down the free will. There's also evidence that this was an entity trying to possess Jackie and possibly the others involved. Some examples include a videotape that seemed to show light going inside Jackie, the mist flying into Al, and what happened to Jeff after that one Ouija session. You might be wondering why a ghost from hell or a fallen angel would follow someone to more than one location. Here's another thing heard in an exorcist interview that could explain why, but not in a scientific sense, of course, in a paranormal and religious sense. Demons and the damned are in a state of constant pain, so they inhabit people and things to get some relief. That would probably explain why it followed Jackie and the investigators as well. Whether you believe Christianity or not, this is a sensible explanation for some of the behaviors. Please remember, this is assuming that the activity was caused by an entity or entities, and that this is not testable science. There is more I want to say about this theory, but I should probably move on. Now let's talk about the claim of there being little photo or video evidence present. The first thing I should say is that claim comes from a YouTube channel called bedtime stories. I feel like the guy might have been confused and didn't look in the right places. What I mean is, if you watch a documentary, you'll see a lot of video and photo evidence. You might also be able to find other photo and video evidence for this case on other parts of the web if you look hard enough. There is a video of Jackie's gate opening and closing by itself, several photos of unexplained lights and mist, hours of video of unexplained lights, footage of the substance dripping, audio of footsteps in the attic, a photo of the horned face, and possibly video of a door opening. I'm not sure if that is real footage or a recreation. That is a lot of photo and video evidence. It might not even be all. There could be more that was shown on TV, at conventions, and so on. However, there isn't video of objects flying. That could be what bedtime stories is talking about. I do think that would be a game changer if certain events were caught on tape, like Jeff being lifted and thrown during an Ouija session. However, I do think that it makes sense that certain activity like objects moving and getting thrown would be difficult to capture. I do think the claim of Conrad's camera not working during the Ouija session is believable because the failure of cameras and other electronic equipment happened some other times in this case and seems to be corroborated by an outside party. I also think that it makes sense that malevolent paranormal entity wouldn't want evidence for his presence, possibly to prevent the victim from getting help, kind of like a criminal trying to cover up their crime. I think Bowman's reaction to Wheatcraft's strangling was realistic. In an unknown encounter, Bowman stated that he was using a camera flash to see Jeff. That makes sense because the photos looked like they were taken in the dark using a flash. As far as the possible inconsistencies with an unknown encounter in the Paranormal Witness episode on the case, there are a few things we should keep in mind. An unknown encounter came out in 1997 while the Paranormal Witness episode came out in 2012. That is obviously so many years after the fact. Paranormal Witness is a dramatization show, and the episode is shorter than a documentary, so the timeline was probably condensed. Considering those points, I think there could be several explanations for the possible inconsistencies. I think one explanation is that some of the witnesses are misremembering since it was made so many years later. Another explanation is these events could have been changed around or represented differently by the producers themselves. Another thing to note is people can make these contradictions with crime as well and be telling the truth. However, that is not to say that these issues should be ignored. These could be genuine inconsistencies. Here are a few other reasons why I think this case is genuine. The investigators involved were never accused of being downright deceptive with hard evidence, like the Warrens, for example. Other residents reported activity while living in the house in San Pedro, possibly several. There haven't been any major inconsistencies found with this case. That's it for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and share to support my channel. Thanks for watching.